Hi everyone, I'm Sud, CEO and co-founder of impress.ai. Welcome to Hiring Diaries, the definitive resource for recruiting professionals and hiring professionals in Asia. Today our guest is Michael Lee and our topic of discussion is assessments. Michael Lee is the managing consultant at SHL based in Singapore. And Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sud. Thanks for having me on.
Let's start by learning more about your role at SHL. What is it that you do on a day-to-day basis at SHL?
To the world, I'm the managing consultant for SHL, which is essentially leading the professional services or our consulting team for our Southeast Asia region. On a day-to-day basis, really what that means is that I partner with clients and I'm eventually responsible, and me and the team, of course, are responsible for the delivery of SHL's range of talent solutions within the region.
So, what are the different kinds of assessments and what are the different functions that they might be used for?
It is definitely true, right? When you talk about assessments to any candidate, they'll typically think of either some form of a cognitive assessment or some kind of personality assessment, and that's true. Of course, that's one of the ways in which clients want to get a view on on the people that they're considering to either recruit into the organization, or if they're considering to promote talent internally, then of course you'd want to have that view. But our range of solutions also covers a broader spectrum. So one is on the psychometric side of things, but we also have a very well developed behavioral assessment suite of services. So that includes things like in-person or virtual assessment and development centers. So that would include things like analysis presentation activities, case study activities, group discussion activities if the client has a group of participants that they want to evaluate, and more structured interview assessment processes.
What is the mechanism of designing an assessment and making sure that it actually works and gives the results that are promised?
And when we talk about really what makes these assessments effective, it's a combination of both. One, from a construct standpoint, right? You want to make sure that the assessment assesses what it sets out to assess. So if you're looking at personality, it should be able to evaluate certain personality traits of the candidate and not then overlap with other elements that may not be linked into personality. So trying to keep it as discrete as possible is helpful. Whereas if you're looking to set up a kind of a cognitive assessment, then it should be designed to measure that particular part of the candidate's cognitive capability, right? Whether that be numerical reasoning or deductive reasoning or inductive reasoning or whatever. So through the years that we've been able to put these tests together, and through the various validation studies that we've been able to run internally, those tests have come out in the market. So the process really for that is relatively detailed in terms of coming up with the items that would go into the assessment, testing those, making sure that they are, obviously valid and reliable, and then, releasing it out into the market for clients to use.
Understand. So I guess this is something that of course takes years and takes lots of data to validate, and of course
Yeah.
it's a continuous process. What are the key challenges that you've seen in convincing or just clients adopting assessments in their hiring process?
It's primarily around this, which is, the first one is effectiveness. They want to ensure that the tool provides them with information that they can rely on to be able to make those decisions. And like I said, with SHL's legacy, that tends to be a conversation that we, relatively easily, get over. I think the second challenge when you think about assessments is also from an efficiency standpoint. So clients are looking for processes that are not too cumbersome, that don't take a lot of load on their internal resources and also on candidates themselves. So they want processes that are quick, easy to get done, and results are available on demand. And I think that's another requirement that we keep hearing from our clients. And once again, through SHL's platforms, we have ways in which that gets done. We also have dedicated teams to support clients in the implementation of that. And I think that's something which which is one that may not be maybe articulated as much, but we do recognize that clients are looking for efficient processes, and they do want assessments that can quickly tell them what they need to know. And then help to move through that recruitment process or the talent management process effectively.
So over the past 2 years, of course, I think a lot of clients have started to get worried about their candidate pipelines. And with assessments, I think one of the key questions that you and I probably get from our clients is, what about the drop off, right? I'm already having a hard time sourcing candidates and I want to keep them in the process, and assessments can lead to some drop off. How are you dealing with that in the current environment?
Yeah. So, a third element that I think also quickly follows the two that I already spoke of. Right? So we spoke about efficiency as one of the challenges, and the second is the effectiveness actually of the process. I think the third E, if I were to put it that way, that would impact this, right? This candidate drop off rate is the experience that the candidates get through that assessment process. The applicants today, they are exposed to processes that are quick, intuitive, but also engaging. I think that's another area of focus that we're seeing. Clients want to ensure that their assessment processes cover, so that candidates do not feel that the process is laborious as they're going through it. They feel engaged, and that could reduce that eventual drop off during the process. So very clearly, applicants these days have a range of options to choose from, and they'd apply to multiple roles at the same time. So what would make them choose one organization over the other would be the experience that they get throughout that recruitment or the application process.
That's super useful to hear. I think for a lot of people who are thinking about the challenges around drop off, I think engaging may be the answer. Engaging the candidates with getting to know the company better, getting to know the job better. I do believe that that's very promising. Now, Michael, just to maybe to learn a bit more about your journey, how did you get into this world of assessments, and what attracted you?
I started off my career as an L&D professional, so starting off with learning and training and designing, training content. And I think from that standpoint, that whole point of behavioral change has always been something that's interested or excited me. So how do you get individuals to identify things that they can do differently, and provide them with the skills and inputs that they require to be able to do that differently. So I kind of started off with that, and then moved on to more kind of organization development roles, or where then you're not just looking at individual employees and the behavioral shifts, but also at organizations. I think what was really interesting for me as I moved to SHL was that opportunity to work not just with one set of stakeholders, which you typically do within an organization, but just really exponentially broadening my horizon in terms of the range of clients across industries, across regions, at various stages of their organization life cycle. And having those conversations really helped to broaden my perspective. At the same time, I think what that meant for me is also quickly having to learn what it takes to be able to kind of perform this consulting role. So I obviously drew a lot of inspiration from my leaders at the time, but also there was a fair bit of learning on the job for me to be able to pick up some of these new behaviors and quickly run with it. As I look back, once again, prior to that, so I had spent some time with psychometric assessments, and I had initially run through a couple of psychometric assessments before. But then after joining SHL and just looking at the way in which SHL drives psychometric assessments, I had to go back and take a harder look at my own personality profile, and then say, all right, so where are the areas that I need to change for me to be successful in the role? And I think that's helped me so much.
Having seen all of this journey, what are some of the key trends that pop out to you? What are the things that have changed over this time in this industry?
I think over the years, one of the things that we've seen the shift towards is a more heavy reliance on technology to be able to perform the same kind of assessments that not only typically you'd get to see from psychometrics, but also replacing some human intervention at times, and especially over the past 2 years, right? So one of the things I keep saying is that COVID hasn't really changed things as much as it has accelerated what was already present. So we were already looking at AI enabled video interviews, for example, machine learning to be able to take on some of the tasks that humans would do. So that was already present, but we're just seeing a lot more of that over the past couple of years. So I think one of the things that's really changed is the fact that that reliance on technology has increased. At the same time, I think technology is also has gotten a lot smarter. The models are getting refined day after day, and they are getting, or they are enabling clients to perform things that at once took a lot more time. So now you can crunch that down to to a shorter span of time, get quicker results, and not have to invest as much of resources in having to do all of those things.
Are there any elements of noise that you think won't really endure as trends, and but are looking very big right now? Do you have an opinion
Yeah,
on
so
that?
sure, that's a good question. So I think when we talk about technology-enabled assessments, right? Maybe one of the first thing that comes to mind are these gamified assessments, right? So instead of a traditional assessment, you get the candidate to play some kind of game. Now, of course, that may have its own value, but from a face validity standpoint and also from an overall validity standpoint, there hasn't been as much research for us to confidently say that that will give you the kind of result that you want. So what we're left with then is, we have good content, but just making that a little more engaging for participants is probably the best way. So from my standpoint, the idea of gamification has its value. Well, essentially what we're looking from that is to say that you don't want to provide candidates with with a really age old experience. You want to make that experience engaging, and how we can continue to keep the candidate engaged without having to go down the gamification route is the way forward. So from that sense, I don't think gamification will be here to stay. I do think though that the integration of technology in processes, and especially in HR processes, is definitely here to stay. To my mind though, it would probably work best, and also as I maybe look to the future, I think it will be a kind of a combination where you really need to get the best of both worlds. So you do need efficient processes where you leverage technology, but that needs to be built on intuitive human judgment as well.
Now, having seen multiple different markets that you've worked in, Michael, are there any cultural differences or any differences in level of adoption of assessments across these markets?
Yeah, and I think that again, goes back to the point on how important it is to have the right kind of comparison groups that you're working with, because we do see cultural differences having, some impact in the way in which you would want to compare between candidates, across different regions, and definitely different regions, have their own kind of challenges they're working with. Right? So, for example, when I was working with a team in India, one of the things that we always had to deal with was that there was a large workforce and there was an equally large applicant pool. So you really need efficient processes to be able to sift out candidates. It's a highly competitive market as well, not only for candidates. Candidates are vying for fewer positions, but also employers find themselves really challenged when they have to find the right talent. And good talent isn't easy to come by, as I'm sure is the case in almost all markets. So how do they effectively identify talent from those volumes was the kind of challenge for them. So based on that, then you have to adjust and put together solutions that best work for them. Moving to I think Southeast Asia, challenges are a little different. It isn't as large a workforce, of course, in the like some of the other Southeast Asian countries, not so much in Singapore, that there may be slightly larger workforces, but there definitely are cultural differences. Language is another aspect which we do need to take into account, because tests and assessments need to be available in a language that is comfortable for the candidates to take, so that they can from the client standpoint as well, they get the most value from that. Also, what I see within especially the Southeast Asian region is that there are slightly higher expectations from the talent, because if you're working within for example in Singapore, it's most likely going to be a regional role, so you're catering to a broader range of stakeholders across regions. So there's kind of a higher expectations. So definitely in terms of working from the client standpoint, you do want to take into account some of these differences. And whenever you're setting up an assessment process, that definitely needs to be considered, or one of the factors that they consider that would make the process effective for them, that would give them the kind of result that they want.
Do you feel like it's like adoption of assessments is at an earlier stage in Southeast Asia because of some of these points that you mentioned?
But I wouldn't say it's exactly early. I think in certain countries it takes a little more time. Like for example, Singapore is still very mature, and it's highly sophisticated. So the market here, clients definitely understand the value, and for them it's a lot more around. Okay, we have a smaller pool, so to speak, but we want some very precise information that can help us, to kind of make those decisions. In some of the other countries, so for example, we do work with a number of clients across, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam. We are seeing the use of assessments pick up, but just like I said earlier, I think one of the considerations for them, which is a key factor, is language, and they need to ensure that the tests are available and the outcome is available in the language that they're looking for, and that sometimes proves to be a hurdle that we have to kind of cross. However, I think in terms of them recognizing the value, that's definitely there. We do talk to a number of these clients quite frequently in terms of using these assessments across. So I think that's present. But you're right. I think to an extent, the amount or the extent to which they roll that out might take a little more time as compared to some of the more mature and sophisticated markets.
So, having worked with probably hundreds of companies over this time in the industry, what are some of the best designed hiring processes which are accurate, scientific, but also deliver a good experience? Like, what's that utopia that you've seen without maybe naming the client?
Well, that's a tricky one, right? I mean, if there was something like that, like a silver bullet, I'm sure all clients would kind of vie for that. Yeah. But I think it really is a matter of applying a process which is kind of fit for purpose, for them, right? More often than not, what we find with clients is that you'll have a slightly different approach as you move up the level within the organization. So, for example, for graduate levels and entry levels, you'll have a particular, recruitment process, which would look at different if you're hiring, kind of middle managers or executives. So, with clients that we work with, I think what I found to work for them is that they have this really specific set of processes that they've set up, for various levels, because they found that that works for them. For the entry level and for the graduate level, you would want to use assessments that can very quickly give you information in terms of what specific aspects that are critical for success in certain roles, so that you can move them ahead of the in the recruitment process, and then you have some steps to take that forward. But I think as you look at roles that are a lot more complex, clients don't mind investing a lot of time and effort. Once again, I know I haven't answered the question, because there really isn't one ideal kind of process. But like I said, I think what tends to work with clients, and what we encourage clients to think about is, when they're setting up these processes, is what's the profile that you're trying to hire for, what's the amount of data that you think will help you, and then to segregate that across different levels. That would probably be one of the things I'd recommend.
Do you feel like a lot of professionals in the talent acquisition industry, is there an overuse and over reliance on gut feel in the industry?
I mean, that's there's always been present. I don't think we'll ever, kind of get away from that, which is why I was a little cautious when saying, that intuitive human judgment. I mean, you'll always have that, right? And I don't think we'll be able to completely isolate ourselves from that. However, I think if that is used alongside some of the other more objective data processes that are put in place, that's really what would bring about the best results. I think more often than not, what we find is that, especially when it comes to seasoned business leaders, they tend to rely a lot on their experience, and, as you say, right, on their own intuition, to be able to make those decisions. So going back to what I said is, earlier, when we try to convince line managers about using assessments, we'll tell them that, of course, you'll have your own processes to collect this information, but look at this information along with this other piece, right? Which is some of the psychometric assessments, and use that to inform your overall decision. That tends to be where sometimes their initial views can get challenged a little bit, and it forces them to relook at candidates. And as long as that happens, we know then that we're adding value, because then you're reducing the impact of what that decision could be, either for or against the candidate, by giving the client something to think about, which is a little beyond just their initial view.
Fantastic. So, just my final question, Michael. For someone, let's say, a hiring team or a talent acquisition group looking into assessments for the first time, what would be your advice to them about how to navigate a lot of the noise there and make the right decisions in what to adopt?
Yeah, that's interesting question. So you're right, there is a lot of information out there. There are a number of providers that claim, that they would be able to give you a certain output, at a certain price point, and very often from an evaluation standpoint, that's what clients would look at, and to say, what's the trade-off in terms of the information that we're getting and how much we're investing for, to collect that information. So I think one of the things that I'd recommend to clients is, to do your research. There is a lot of information out there. Yes, that's true, and you might want to really look through, some of these providers in terms of what they're offering, how long they've been in the business. Very importantly, we recommend our clients to say, does the provider have the right kind of database to be able to provide you with those comparisons, and with those insights that they require? Do they have the breadth of experience across industries, across regions, across levels, to be able to give you that information? So if clients can do a little bit of that, to be able to understand what the a provider stands for, and how much of experience they have in that area, that can be helpful. Then when you really break it down, and when you identify, let's say, a couple of providers that can be helpful, at the end of the day, I think from a construct standpoint, the 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 base of the assessments would largely remain the same. I think then what clients can look out for is really, what would suit my need. So what's the outcome that these providers are expecting to provide, and how will that help me? But it goes beyond just the outcome or the recommendation, but it also is how well equipped is the your partner to support you through that journey, right? So do they have the kind of experience to be able to guide you, and not just tell you, here's your report, now make your decision based on that, but can they guide you, can they support you? Do they have the not only technical expertise, but also the resources to be able to provide that kind of additional value adding services? I think that's something that can also be considered when clients are deciding to choose a particular assessment or a service provider. So obviously, looking through the provider themselves in terms of the range of offerings, how long that they've been in the business, and also the comparison groups tend to be quite helpful, and then the kind of support that they can provide through that journey is something that can also be considered. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael, again, for coming on this show. I think it's been really helpful to discuss these topics with you, and I hope this will help the audience as well.
Sure, of course, absolutely. Thanks for having me, sir.